you. You're tuned in to the Skirts Up Show with Samantha and Melissa.
Join our mission to normalize failure, but still uncover the positives at every twist and turn.
Skirts up, but keep your panties on. What's up, Skirts Up Squad? It is Samantha.
And Melissa.
And we are almost to the end of another season.
Isn't that insane? Because like
4 episodes left.
Okay, so I was somewhere the other day and I was telling this person about our podcast and she's like, oh, how long have you been doing it? And I was like, oh my gosh, like exactly a year almost. I got so excited.
That's what happened to me too. You're telling someone about it. They're like, oh, how long have you been doing a podcast? And I was like, oh, it's been like exactly a year is when we came up with it.
Yeah, that was me too. I was like, oh my God. And so, yeah, because it was literally New Year's Eve, as we all know.
But
fates were changed.
I think why it hits so good right at this moment is that, yes, this hits the year marker, but also people who have been on TV, and not just one, multiples, have reached out to us. So this is just really gonna it's gonna make season 3 like so special.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I honestly feel like we can see the growth too. I see.
For sure.
Yeah.
There's a story that's unfolding. There's a path.
We've grown both individually, I think.
And business.
And together. Yeah. I agree.
Melissa, when we were trying to come up with how we wanted to start this episode with a fail, what did you come up with?
I was like, well, shit. And she goes, are you ever late anywhere? Yeah, like all the time. Wrong turns. Oh, every day.
Communicate with someone.
I'm like, you know what? These things aren't even funny anymore because I do them all the time. And I was like, I think that's why I can't think of a fail because like as soon as I do something, now granted, I'm not going to say like, oh, I just don't care. I do try to apologize and right my wrongs, but like I'm always doing stuff wrong. And so how am I supposed to even remember something extra exciting wrong? I'm like, I don't know, man.
You're being hard on yourself.
Thank you. So right now, that's where I am with my fails. I'm just like, I don't know. I fail all the time. So much I can't remember.
My life is a fail. I believe that came out of Amelia's mouth.
No. No.
No, it was about mistakes. She was singing that mistake song.
Yes.
And so she's singing, oopsies, I made a mistake and it's okay. It's okay. And I go, Amelia, when's the last time you've made a mistake? And she goes, man, my whole life is a mistake.
Oh, that's adorable and sad, but adorable because she doesn't really mean it like.
Yeah, she didn't mean it like that.
Yeah.
Real quick, because I know we got to move on. Let me just tell you the fail that I did. So I'm an idiot, and Amelia has been harassing me about bringing home the class pet. And so
I do know a little bit about this.
I agreed that she could bring it home.
Which, wait, first of all, I thought that was crazy. We had a class pet at school when I was little, but it stayed in the school. Like, what if a kid accidentally killed it? They would never forgive themselves.
Right. It would be terrible. I don't know why.
Why are they sending it home?
It's a hamster. And so this hamster goes home with a student every weekend. Amelia missed her previous chance with it because I was out of town and I didn't want her to take care of it by herself with my mom. I didn't feel like that was a nice extra responsibility. So when the time came, the teacher asked for a volunteer. I was like, well, we'll do it. It's fine. I didn't realize it was a holiday break. So not 2 days, 2 weeks.
Oh, no.
Is how long we were going to have this hamster.
That right there's the fail.
That is a fail, but it gets better. So Amelia, of course, it's the break. So she wants to go have sleepovers with her friends, her dad, she wants to go do things. And of course, like that's okay. Hamsters aren't hard to take care of. I didn't mind taking care of it. The first night that she leaves me in charge with the hamster, I fucking lost it.
Wait, you let it, it got out of the cage, you let it out. What happened?
I could not find it.
Like she didn't put it away?
No, she put it away. And then I know that the hamster was safe when she left. I know it was there. And then the next morning, I put it into the ball with Nora and we were letting it play and run around.
Oh, no.
We put it away.
Okay.
And then the next morning when we went to go check on it, it was not there. It was not in the cage.
Oh, no.
And so I'm literally having a literal panic attack, like whole body shaking, sweats, like can't form words. And I'm like, Simon, I lost it.
You're going to be the one parent that killed the class pet.
Yes. And I was freaking out. I was like, she's going to be known as like the pet killer.
Oh,
and
no.
I was like, and I knew this was a bad idea. I don't know why we did this. And he's like, are you sure it's not in the cage? And so, and I also called Courtney, and I was like in hysterics. And she goes, it's in the cage. If the door's not open, it's in the cage. I was like, but it's not. And so to calm down, Simon was like, I'm on my way home. I'm 30 minutes away. And I was like, okay, I can't do anything about it right now. So I sat on the couch and like just pretended like this wasn't happening. And then when Simon got home, we like dug all around like into the bedding, and it took us like we had to dig through the whole kennel, but finally we found it burrowed under the very bottom of the kennel, under
That's
all the
so
stuffing.
Scary.
And I was like, why is it there? And then my mom goes, well, hamsters burrow when they're cold. And I was like,
I had a dwarf hamster once. I could have told you that.
this doesn't feel like common knowledge to me.
No, I don't feel like it is.
Yeah, note to
And
self.
also, why didn't the teacher like give you some like, no, for real, did it come with some, yes.
That might have been nice to know.
Yeah.
But just so y'all know, hamsters burrow.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad that it was just that.
Yeah, it went back to school safely today.
I thought you were going to say it got out of the ball.
Oh, no.
And like was in the house lost, because that's
I thought
scary.
it was in the house lost, though. I could not find it in the kennel.
It could get stepped on, the dogs.
Exactly. And when I had a hamster growing up, on Christmas Day, it got out of the cage and killed.
Oh, so you're already traumatized.
Yes, and I'm like, please, for the love of God.
Oh, Sam. I'm sorry. We got to do some like therapy on this, I think.
Walker.
Melissa Walker.
Where are you? Trauma. All right. Well, that's the fail. Let's move into our guests.
Let's do it. I'm really excited to share this guest with you guys today. You all know I can never not mention her, but my best friend, Melissa Walker.
Walker.
I have been told, as we all know, it was said on the podcast, I mention her every episode. I said, Melissa, I need somebody who knows stuff about past life regression. Melissa Walker said, I have the perfect person. But not only does she do past life, she does a lot of things. And she's very, very knowledgeable. And she said, I hope this won't offend you because you already told me your age earlier. But she did say, she's been doing past life regression longer than you and I have been alive. And I was excited about that.
Melissa's going to start charging us like royalties.
She might. She has to pay for those horses. But so today we have with us Ellen Diana. Her website, if you want to check her out, is chalicespring.net. She is a shamanic practitioner, a licensed psychotherapist, a spiritual guide, and a past life regressionist therapist. I hope I said all of that correctly, Ellen.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome.
And you did fine.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, in terms of the past life, there is a story. My husband and I were flying from Maine to Arizona, where he was going to start a new job. And in the airport, I was looking for reading material, and I picked up a book titled You Were Born to Be Together Again, I think was the title. That may not be quite right.
Okay.
But it was intriguing to me because we both felt that our lives were meant to be in terms of our meeting and our marriage. And so it turned out to be a book about past lives written by people who lived in Arizona. So that sort of set me on a track of interest. And then we did settle in Arizona, and I did not meet the couple who wrote the book, but I did have an opportunity to work with people who were doing past life hypnosis. Now, this was in 1977, so a long time ago.
Wow.
And I worked with a man who really became my mentor, who was a psychologist. So I worked with hypnosis with him and was getting trained in hypnosis. And I worked with the person who was doing the past life work. So I integrated those two things and began doing past life hypnosis regression and realized that what came up for people, I did not have the equipment in terms of my training to help them process. So it was from that spiritual understanding of reincarnation, past lives, that I decided I needed to go back to school. And eventually I got my master's degree in social work so that I could effectively work credentialed as a therapist who could help people integrate and understand what came up for them in past lives and how the impact would affect them in their lives currently, and what it meant in terms of relationships, in terms of repetitive mistakes or repetitive patterns. So that's how I got into past life work.
What kind of things were coming up for
Well,
people that made
sometimes people come in thinking, oh, maybe I was a queen or a king, or maybe I was somebody famous. Usually what happens is people, like most of us in the world, are ordinary people. In the past, of course, it would have been classes that were defined as serfs or as laborers or as artisans. Most people, because the upper classes were small in number, most people experience lives that are quite ordinary, sometimes painful. And that's sometimes hard to understand what the message from that life, if there's a progression and you come here to learn lessons about being a better person, how to live as a better person, how did that life progress me? And what impact does it have on my current life?
Let me back up a minute. So, are people coming to you once you got licensed? Are they coming to you saying, "Hey, I want to learn about a past life and learn about, how all of that works," or were they coming to you for some sort of trauma and then you start progressing them through, "Oh, this might be a past life breakthrough"?
Good question. It can happen either ways and other ways. Sometimes people come to me specifically because they suspect they have a past life and there are breakthroughs that are happening, either in dreams, they keep dreaming about a certain place or a certain period of time, like the Crusades, and they don't understand why they're dreaming about the Crusades. And they may have these repetitive dream experiences. Sometimes people are just curious and they have an affinity for, say, Scotland. And so they want to know why they are so attracted to Scotland. There's no ancestry they know of. And sometimes it comes up in therapy through trauma work or, again, some other sort of breakthrough where it seems as though it can be a phobia. Why am I terrified of water when I have no experience I know of that has brought me to be terrified of water? Why can't I wear turtlenecks? That was one of the I've had clients who can't stand anything around their necks, and you do past life work.
Me.
Often those people were hanged in a past life or had some accident or a death that was by strangulation in some way. So understanding where that root is helps them escape from the domination of those phobias in this life.
Do you start asking them questions about, are there dreams that are reoccurring, or when they bring that up, you start dissecting it, or is that
I do a lot of dream
that
work
you bring up yourself?
anyway, integrated into therapeutic pattern. I do.
Oh, that was one of Sam's questions.
I always ask clients what they're dreaming if they are spiritual guidance clients, because a lot of soul work gets done in our sleeping hours. A lot of unconscious material is made conscious through dreams. A lot of, dreams are this liminal space where we're not in control. And also that our dreams are not tied to ordinary time space. So it makes sense that since we're not in linear time, which is a construct that's only done through, the mind of humans anyway, and we move into a fluid sense of time in our dreams. You can have a dream that you were 3 years old, or you can have a dream about an incident that happened. You know, your children can be 3, even though they're 40 now. So dreams don't have that construct
Right.
of linear time. So it's no wonder that things would break through in dream time from other times in speaking of linear time, like the Crusades.
I actually got big goosebumps when you said that oftentimes reoccurring dreams of like locations and stuff could be or are essentially breakthroughs for people, because I actually just looked it up like 2 days ago. I woke up crying because there's this location, like it looks like a thrift store with multiple different like sections. I don't really know. And I end up in this place often. And this last time that I ended up in that place, I found and ran into this person, and I just was so emotional. I was like, "You have helped me so much. Remember last time that I saw you, and this is my last dream. You let me fill a bag and took stuff that I needed." And like I was like literally crying in the dream and like being so thankful. Then I woke up crying and I was like, why do I keep going to this place? I don't even know who this person is. I don't know what this place is. And it was really odd. So it's really interesting that you say that.
And then I wonder, like, is the bag a metaphor? Is the thrift store a metaphor?
Not a clue, but it's just really funny.
It is, and that
brought that up.
indeed could be one of the ways that a portal to a past life becomes available. There would be questions that I would ask that might relate to your current life, but you know, what clothing were you wearing? Was there a period in which your clothing or clothing of people in the dream, so that you might begin to pinpoint what were the products that were put in the bag? It could be metaphorical to life now, but it could indicate whether there was a different time frame for the setting of the dream. Yeah.
That makes sense.
I did a church service where I was talking about reincarnation as the subject of my sermon. And one of the women in the congregation came up to me afterwards and she said, "You know, I have a grandson who I babysit a lot. And she has over her couch," she said, "a panoramic vista of the Mesa Verde cliffs, the cliff dwellings that are in Colorado." And he stood on the couch, you know, he was only about 2 or 3, and he stood on the couch and he was feeling the places where the doorways were, and he was gazing intently at this picture. And he turned around and he said, "You know, Nana, when we lived there, I was the grandmother and you were the child." So that's a sort of classic breakthrough. Children who become verbal begin talking about when I was, when we were, you know, when I was, when I lived before. And a lot of times in that time frame of about 2 years old to 5 or 6 years old, you can have a lot of fluidity with that. And most parents just think it's imagination.
Those are the stories that made me consider past life to be something to really think about. It's, you know, growing up, it's kind of taboo, I feel like, still to kind of be like, oh, I believe in reincarnation. So I can't imagine what it was like when you were learning about it. But then there are so many stories of children that like they'll have a scar on their body and be like, oh, that's when I was shot. And then they can find a history of that, or I was killed by this person, and then can find a history of that.
There's a professor, he has since passed, but the man who did most research, really fine research, was a professor of psychiatry, in fact, of the head of the psychiatry department for a number of years at the University of Virginia. His name is Dr. Ian Stevenson. And he has written a book in which he has documented many, many past life situations in which children have talked about their previous lives, and then they have been reincarnated quickly enough that they can go back to where that child was when their life ended in a previous existence, and find relatives and document the stories that the child tells about dying in a motorcycle accident in Iowa. They go back to Iowa in the town where he says he was. Sure enough, there are aunts and uncles and grandparents still alive. They can talk about this young man who died when he was a 20-year-old or something on a motorcycle, that this 5-year-old continues to talk about, who is not the
Whoa.
one who died on the
Yeah.
motorcycle, but the previous
Has facts and
that the
that
family
the
confirmed.
family can confirm.
Yeah.
Wow.
When you do past life regression,
Can we talk about the difference between a past life reading versus a regression, and then talk about how we do the regression?
past life readings are sometimes really authentic and are reliable, but as often as that may happen, probably more often they're not. And I say that because it's like you could go to a psychic, and there are a lot of people who label themselves who are as psychics or channelers who are not authentically getting that material. So it really is not, it's through their imaginal realm or their experience rather than what is authentic to the person who is coming to them. So I have some skepticism about past life readings because it really depends on the person you go seek a reading from. Past life regression is different. I have the person usually with me. I've done some remote work now that we have everything on Zoom. My preferred way, of course, is having somebody in my office. But the process of regression is that I lead them. They hypnotize themselves. It's like an altered state of consciousness,
Mhm.
like dreaming. You go into an altered brainwave state, and then they allow that to happen. They hypnotize themselves through my voice, my words. Do some guided imagery, and then they cross a threshold into a past life. And I have no idea where that is going to take them once they open that door.
And of course, you cannot see it because this is in their brain.
Well, they're
I
talking though, right?
I see it only because they tell me what's happening for them.
Okay.
Because in the process of being in trance hypnosis, they are perfectly able to tell me what they see, what they're experiencing, what's happening.
Oh.
I move time forward. I stop time and ask what's happening. Then we move time forward, see what's happening now. You can go back and say, well, what's the relationship between what's happening now? How do you see? So that you take people through lifetimes that way. And I think that's much more legitimate. It's all coming from them and their experience once they're across the threshold. I am not doing anything other than responding to putting myself in the same place they are through what they tell me they're visualizing.
Yeah, you're just a receiver. You're not giving them like the power of suggestion per se. You're probably very particular with the words you use in your hypnosis so as not to suggest things, I imagine.
That's right.
Okay.
There's a real responsibility to ethics involved in that you don't want to cloud.
Kind of like, don't lead the witness.
Yeah. I would feel like, how can I trust what I'm seeing or explain it? Like, what if like my brain is just making it up because you're talking? Like, I don't know.
And then my answer is, so what? What your brain makes up is relevant.
Okay.
What your brain makes up is relevant because it is information. Where your mind takes you imaginally is relevant information. It doesn't come out of nowhere. It comes from some context you're holding within you as an expectation for what a past life may be.
It's like trust that you know somewhere inside what you need, kind of a thing, and that it's coming up to the forefront through that hypnosis.
Exactly.
Now, I remember Melissa mentioning to me after her conversation with you that, so you guys are going to do a session.
We are.
I think I'm going to book one. I'm still, I'm excited. I want to hear.
You're nervous.
I want to hear Melissa's. I feel like I do all the things.
That's okay. You had to go do a boudoir shoot before I would do it.
Yes, I did. I did make you do that. So she was saying that when someone comes to you to start doing a past life regression, that it can take multiple sessions before you get any information. Do I remember that correctly?
I don't remember saying that, but maybe
It, I don't remember that either, but
Oh.
it's a good question.
it is. Yeah.
There's actually sort of a measurable scale
Ooh.
as to how hypnotizable somebody is. The more a person is a visual person, it's easier for them to follow the visualization clues in a process of centering
Hypnosis.
into a hypnotic state.
Hey, Skirts Up Squad, it's your girl Melissa, and as a small business owner, I love to support other small businesses. Currently, one of my favorites is the Buttercup Candle Company.
They are the sweetest people ever. I am so glad that I met them. They custom created a scent for us called Land of Lottie for our event that we recently did. They also have a candle with the eucalyptus. It is the only eucalyptus scent that I will ever have in my house again. It is that good. Check out the Buttercup Candle Company for all of your scented needs.
You heard it here first, the Buttercup Candle Company.
The more a person has an imaginal realm that they're aware of, the more a person who has a sort of creative imagination, the more a person as a child sort of was a daydreamer or had fantasy play in terms of making up stories, or they read a lot of books and took themselves into what they were reading. Those kinds of indicators make it easier for a person to be hypnotized. Somebody who is more comfortable with rational, logical, prove it to me, skeptical approach to whatever the issue is, have a harder time letting themselves move into the realm of a fluidity of time space, harder time being hypnotized. My husband had a hard time letting himself go into hypnosis. And once I got him hypnotized, I was not going to let him go without taking him through as many past lives as I could in a reasonable
past lives
time.
in one hypnosis?
Absolutely.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Depending on what comes up. And I take people through their deaths so that there's a completion of a life before you then move on to another life.
Okay.
So yes, in that session of a couple of hours, I took him through 6 lives.
Oh,
Oh my
wow.
gosh.
How did he
Yeah.
feel at the end? You said he was harder to hypnotize, which makes me think he's more skeptical.
And that's got to be exhausting. Your brain's got to be so
Yes.
fried.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it made a huge amount of sense to him in terms of the periods of history that he avidly studied.
Mhm.
He had one of his degrees was in classical Greek and Roman history. He spoke classical Greek.
Oh, wow.
So this made a huge amount of sense to him and put things in context for him. In this life, another one of his lives in that period was 400 or 500 BCE. In other words,
Wow.
a long time before what we call the Common Era. He had studied that history. He was a theologian. So that made perfect sense too. Go back to a period of time that would have been ancient biblical times. There's sometimes a connection between who we become in this life and what has happened to us without our knowing it, that we're building on experience from past lives.
Wow, that's interesting because it's true, like, the whole nature nurture argument. Obviously, everything that we have become is, it's
An
built on
experience.
the different experiences we've had in our life, trauma, whatnot. This actually takes me back to something that you had mentioned, Ellen, on the phone, is you had said something about epigenetics.
Yeah.
I find that to be very interesting because I think it was Malcolm Gladwell that I was listening to on a podcast once, and he was talking about how they did like kind of a study and they found that children who were born to those who had been through the Holocaust and had been starved had more like a very specific gene that made them want to hold on to food. I wanted to open that conversation.
Epigenetics is a fascinating new realm of information in all kinds of ways, and for all kinds of reasons, not just psychological study, which indeed it is. But we now know that epigenetic reality takes us back many generations. I was talking with my spiritual guide, who is also, we talk a lot about epigenetics. And last I had read, it was 11 generations.
Oh.
So what happened in our family history for 11 generations still impacts us. She has heard it's now that they're talking 15 generations.
And are we talking about
Well, 15
family generations of your current family, like their parents, their
Yeah.
parents, their
yes,
parents?
through genetics.
Okay.
So
Through genetics.
I was just going to say, we're just for the listeners who don't know, we're talking about actual gene expression in your body, like can be affected by 15 whatnot generations in your past.
So, for example, I mentioned in terms of the past life experience, I mentioned a person who kept dreaming about the Crusades and could not figure out why he was dreaming about the Crusades. If you count back 15 generations, you're back well into the period of Renaissance and in going back. So even though there may not be a consistent genetic link, to have past lives that affect our lives is no more surprising than genetic heritage from many generations past affecting our lives
Got you.
today, which means we all have experienced a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
More than just from this generation and our actual current lives.
More than just from this generation.
Is that
In fact, you may have a very sublime life in this generation, but some trauma things keep coming up and you can't figure it out. Looking into past lives or looking into epigenetics and what happened 4 or 5 generations ago can inform what's happening for you now.
Just to be clear, my understanding of when people are talking about healing generational trauma is things like my grandfather was an alcoholic that was physically abusive to his children. So that caused my mother, and I'm making this up, this caused my mother to be overprotective and be anti-alcohol, which then gives us a obvious reaction, whether direction that'll go. Is that kind of how it's leading into generational trauma, or is this like unrelated? It's just so much.
Absolutely.
That was a good example, I think.
Absolutely. And alcoholism is a really good example of family passing down family trauma and also has the epigenetic component because there is a genetic link, a physiological proclivity for alcohol
That's true.
abuse or alcoholism. And that we know because, in part, when colonials brought in alcohol and gave it to native peoples that were here who had no experience with that in their systems, their genetic predisposition led them to a higher rate of alcoholism
Interesting.
because they weren't genetically prepared. They didn't have a capacity. So alcoholism is a great example of epigenetically what happens in terms of family trauma and a history, how far it goes back.
Now, this is a more personal, and we can totally just not talk about this. I feel like sexual trauma is also something that can be generational. Do you see a correlation?
Yes. The answer is yes. There is a genetic link in sexual trauma as well.
Okay.
If there has been sexual trauma to your great-grandmother and that family system, for example, kept it secret or she never told, that comes down and down again and down again. It can be the proclivity for family secrets. That can be a family value is to keep things close, to keep things secret. We don't say anything bad about we don't tell each other. We certainly don't let the outside.
Interesting.
So The trauma may get handled in different ways, but can definitely come down.
We're talking about this, the epigenetics, and we're talking how it's very similar to having trauma from past lives. Would you say that we generally come back into the same family when we reincarnate? And then that's a double whammy?
I generally means usually.
True.
Right? It means most.
Right.
Okay.
I'm not sure that that's true.
Thank you.
And I want to bring up something that can be really mind-blowing, and that's the idea, and there's some investigation that are showing that we actually are living concurrent lives because our souls are not limited to one physical experience of incarnation at a time.
That is so interesting.
So it may be, and this has happened when I do regression hypnosis, sometimes what happens is a person is living a concurrent life, not a past life. So sometimes there's this sideways thing that happens. It isn't really regression going back. It's while you've opened the door, boom, I'm going to take a sideways curve. And, I'm also living as a peasant woman in Latvia.
Could this be a dream breakthrough? If you're seeing things, like, could it be a concurrent life?
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sure.
And like, would that, my mind is blown.
She warned us.
We're so much more than we think we are.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just feel like there's so many questions. I have so many.
Yeah, because it isn't what we've been told.
Yeah.
We know that people under hypnosis can speak that they cannot speak, that they've never been taught, right?
Yeah.
Xenoglossy is the name of the phenomenon that when people begin speaking another language that they don't know.
Okay.
I've never had xenoglossy happen, but I have had people, when they're regressed, have a whole different accent, a whole different cadence to their speaking, a whole different vocabulary than they have in ordinary living.
Wow.
I did work with a young woman who was 18 or 20, maybe a little older when I was doing the work with her, who came back from being a young male in Scotland, and her whole demeanor changed. She became this swaggery sort of male,
Masculine.
the way a 17-year-old kid carries himself. And in that period of time in Scotland, she was actually a young warrior. So there was this whole the whole scope of what she knew as this young man in Scotland was far greater than any understanding or knowledge she had in this life in American culture.
Actually, that's so funny. I was just going to ask, in your experience, have you seen people who have concurrent lives versus the people who have more past lives behave differently or have different kinds of breakthroughs?
No, I haven't seen it too much. But I do think sometimes dreams may be portals to that sort of thing happening. That shift happening in dreams rather than needing to come for hypnosis. In terms of past life regression, one of the things that is so valuable is that while there's trauma, you learn, well, I survived that. I have been through, even if you died under the conditions of the trauma, I have been through the worst. So what's happening now in my life, I can handle because I know I have endured something before. That's one carryover piece. Another carryover piece is that you may have had a life in which a person had great skills and confidence and a persona that you admire. And you don't feel like you possess those kinds of interpersonal skills or that kind of bravery. And those characteristics can be cultivated because you already had them. It's important to remember that the personalities we have the ego we have, still we want to get to a level in which we're living from our souls, not just our egos. We want our lives to reflect the values that are our soul values, that our egos are that smaller self we would like to get out of the way so that the more radiant parts of ourselves can come through, which we all have,
That makes sense.
which we all are.
This is really hard to envision. I guess when we first started talking about the soul living multiple concurrent lives, the click for me was like, oh, that makes sense because we're living right now. And then, when we met with Kelly, she was a psychic medium in another episode. She was connecting with souls that had passed, which probably have reincarnated and are living amongst us. So that makes sense. But we're talking about my soul right now living in another dimension.
Possibly.
So that's like really hard to...
The wholeness of your soul being expressed through more than one incarnate at the same time. Why not? I mean,
as you talk, you're like, of course, this is possible. It's all possible. And this is why. And you have words and definitions to back up everything that you're saying. How did you get all this confidence and obtain all this knowledge and just get this vast understanding of what we're learning today?
how did I get here?
You have so much knowledge. Like, it's just mind blowing.
Well, I'm 81 and I've been doing therapeutic work. I said 1977 was when I started past life regression work. I've been doing psychotherapeutic work for 40 years. I've been doing spiritual guidance work after getting credentialed in spiritual guidance after a 2-year program. I've been doing that for 20 years. I've never, ever stopped growing and learning and delving deeper and experiencing more.
So I wonder if this is part of your question because it's making me have a question. Growing up, it was you don't question, you have faith, this is true. And I have decided since I've left to never behave that dogmatically about anything else again. So I will never say, I know that this is true, whether it's about I know there is a God and I'll never say I know there's not a God. I'll never probably say I know I was reincarnated. I know I lived a past life. But I do feel like there's parts of me that can say, I kind of think I did. I kind of feel this way. And I feel like Sam might have been asking, how are you so confident? Like, it seems like you know.
Yes, with every being inside of you. Yes.
Is that?
Yeah.
I trust the investigative work that Ian Stevenson did.
Okay.
I think he proved reincarnation, but I want to be real careful.
Just for those who
in
can't
saying
see,
that
she
I
did
don't-
do quote marks around the word proved.
Right. I am not attached to any of the dogma that has grown around reincarnation. I don't know how it works. I don't really know that anybody knows how it works.
Yeah.
We know so little as humans. As I say, time is not linear. Quantum physics has opened all kinds of doors that are mind-blowing. So that when I talk about concurrent lives, it could be a life that's being lived in 1215 England, because we don't know that 1215 England isn't still happening.
Oh, that's even another layer. We're so dumb.
Oh my gosh. This is insane.
But what's so I am not attached to any of the dogma that explains how reincarnation works.
Okay.
I don't think we know enough to know how reincarnation works or why.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
My interest is in helping people understand themselves more and having people understand that what has happened to them in the past, whether it's the life they're living now or whether it's a life they lived before, can help them become better, more effective human beings.
That's
right?
beautiful.
More kind, more loving, more authentic in relationships.
Yeah.
That's the important piece. And I really appreciate your saying that the knowing, there's so much more we do not know and maybe don't need to know.
I liked it when you said that to Sam
and
earlier. She said, what if I'm making it up? And you said, well,
So what?
what if you are? I thought that was pretty beautiful.
I know we're running out of time, but a couple of things that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Something that Melissa and I have learned recently is that with the society that we live in on how we're supposed to think, and I'm talking about religion, I'm trying to be,
Vague. And she doesn't want to offend anyone because we do accept and love
everyone, all their beliefs. How has that affected your life with being so passionate about learning and growing?
Great question.
Thank you.
She's a journalist, truly.
So I was very fortunate in that I was raised by parents who were Unitarian Universalists. I don't know if you're familiar.
We are a little.
And my husband was a Unitarian Universalist minister. I have stayed in that faith tradition. One of the best things that ever happened as a child growing up in that faith tradition was that we were allowed to ask any questions. We were allowed to seek our own answers or find them however we felt was right for us. There was a church school curriculum for a year in which we visited churches and synagogues and Islamic temples and all Mormon church, all of these places that we could visit so we could get a flavor for and understand something of other faith traditions. So my whole upbringing in terms of religion and theology was
acceptance.
Build your own theology that makes sense to you.
Mm-hmm.
And it was okay if we left the church as kids and joined a different church or a synagogue. So I had that background, but I always ask, is this something that is opening me up, or is this something that's shutting me down? Is something in this that's shutting me down? And I think we're born as humans to be opening and opening some more and opening more. I think if things are shutting you down, then the question is partly, why am I needing to be shut down? What in me is frightened? Where's the fear? Because do you want a fear-based life, or do you want a life of openness that is questing?
Yeah. So I guess, well, first of all, I got chills just now when you were talking about, is this opening me up? Is it shutting me down? How would you say maybe all of that has helped you in understanding and helping people find out about their past lives? It seems like you're able to be more open, more, I guess, not afraid of asking certain questions, which I guess that's got to be a big part of the hypnosis process, right?
Yes, and not being afraid of where people take you. The people that I do the hypnosis with lead, and I have to not be afraid where they take me.
Have you had an experience where you're like, whoa, and you had to, and then you had to remind yourself, okay, I don't need to be afraid. Yeah, like what is that like from your side of the chair?
So I think we're all capable of all human behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere in my psyche or my makeup is somebody who could murder.
Yeah.
Or, we live in such a divided nation, and there's a lot of fear about people being triggered by the Nazi past and what's happening in our country right now with militias and with affinity for that kind of neo-Nazi group. So in trying to be compassionate, I have to acknowledge that somewhere in me is somebody who could, if my experience of life was right, have Nazi views.
Yeah,
right?
You're right. It's
So
not fair.
I have to be able to acknowledge that and then understand that human beings basically want the same things, but they
Agreed.
don't agree on how to go about getting them. The big piece is, are you believing something or following a system out of fear?
Mm.
Is the root of how you're behaving and what you're joining because you are afraid of the other?
Mm-hmm.
And where am I afraid? It comes back to what's in me, how I behave. And my hope is that not only do I stay open, but that I also stay compassionate
Oh, that's
with myself and with people with whom I come in contact.
and that's probably a constant effort.
Checking
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
Wow, I just said that. Ooh, let me back up. Where did that come from?
That happens to me sometimes. I have to remind myself, wait, that's not who I want to be. And Sam and I are going to talk about that next week, I think, even. Do you have any experiences you want to share with us? Like, hey, this is a really cool past life regression session that I went through with somebody once.
Yeah, I'll go back to my husband. One of the lives that he lived was as a ship captain in the 1700s. Somewhere in Wales, he felt he was sailing in and out of harbor at Wales. And he could not, for example, watch the movie The Perfect Storm. He couldn't,
Whoa.
he won't go on a sailboat. The trauma that people experience that carries over, this whole process is for a purpose, not just for some sort of giddy fun, which it can be like a party stunt,
Yeah.
but really it's about healing. Really it's about healing. And really it's about not limiting your life because of something that has happened in this life or that's happened in a previous life.
So
So
glad you
again,
said
what
that.
strengths come from previous lives that you want to instill in yourself in this life? And how am I limiting my life
Mm.
because I'm afraid of something?
Wow.
I love
It's
it.
about learning and healing.
You've had many, many moments of just amazing words of wisdom and things that I know that we'll be like repeating to ourselves throughout the day for many
Yeah.
days. Do you have any closing words of wisdom that you want to leave with us all today?
I guess I would just say that what I hope people live, and through my work, if I can help them do that, is to live lives of coherence.
Mm.
That we are all part of a universe in which none of us is separate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What we do, our actions, even our thoughts, if we know about quantum physics again, affect the whole,
Yeah.
affect all of the other beings and parts of the universe. So behaving, acting, believing, and thinking in that coherence of a whole of which we are a part and that we affect that whole.
Thank you.
Wow. My brain is just spinning. There's just so many things that I feel like all intertwine. And I just feel like it's I don't know, connecting all the dots. It's a lot.
Connect all the dots, let me know.
I do always say, like, when people ask me if I could have a superpower, what would it be? I want to be omniscient so bad. Like, I just need the answer and the truth to all things.
What kind of past life did that come from?
Oh, I was the god. I was God.
Uh-huh.
Good luck with that.
Ellen, thank you so much for joining us today.
You've been amazing, and we really
You're so
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Thank you for asking me. Melissa Walker.
Yes. If you liked what you heard today, hit that like button, or the subscribe button, or whatever button it is that you have.
Just hit it. To continue this conversation with us, join the Skirts Up Show on what is it again?
Well, we have Facebook, we have YouTube,
And Pinterest.
and no, we do not have a Pinterest, but we have Instagram.
You knew what I meant.
Rate and review. rate, and review.
Hey, you! You're tuned in to the Skirts Up Show with Samantha and Melissa.
Join our mission to normalize failure, but still uncover the positives at every twist and turn.
Skirts up, but keep your panties on.